You know, you'll hear the word positive discipline in the literature, positive parenting. And, you know, there's always been discipline around, but now there's sort of these different programs that we refer to as positive parenting, positive discipline. And one of the things they talk about is when you're setting up consequences for kids. That you first need to reveal what those are. So the child is aware of what's appropriate and not appropriate. And what would be a consequence of it. So if they are riding their bike and they ride in the street, you know, you're informing them that if they choose to ride in the street, that they're not going to be riding their bike. They'll need to put their bike away. You know, that kind of thing. It depends on, you know, what rule you're trying to set. So you're just, you know, telling them the information that they need to know. Okay. Relate refers to the type of consequence. You know, typically you want to set up a consequence that's related to, you know, whatever it is that they're doing. So in this case, you know, they weren't able to ride the bike for a time, right? That was related to, before they were riding the bike, now they're not going to be riding the bike. Okay? Sometimes we set up consequences that it's a little more difficult to make the connection between the behavior and that consequence. So if you say, well, you're not going to go to the party on Sunday because he rode the bike in the street, you see what I mean? Rather than, you know, not allowing them to use the bike. Okay, it's easier to make the connection between that particular behavior and the consequence versus the other. Okay, so that's something to consider. And then they talk about respect, just being respectful of the child. And you know, Judith has said this early on with punishment. When you're belittling the child, attacking the child, you know, that's not really helping in the whole idea of discipline, which is what you want to build up the child so they're making good, appropriate choices, and they also feel good about the fact that they can do that. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're respectful, and I know that when you want to ride the bike on the sidewalk, that you'll be able to do that. And reasonable, that's more or less related to kind of reasonable in the consequence kind of thing, reasonable time. Some people might take something away for like a month. Kind of. You know, would that be considered reasonable? So it's something to think about. You really want to give, especially a younger child, you want to give them a chance to repair what they did, to correct the mistake. So if they rode the bike in the street, okay, then they need to put their bike away. They put their bike away. Allow them time, if possible, that same day to ride their bike again. Okay? And you're stressing to them that you know that they understand, you know, that they ride their bike on the sidewalk. So you're always sort of emphasizing that they have an understanding of it, they know what needs to be done, they're capable of doing it, you know, trying to encourage from that point. What would be ineffective parenting strategies? Just throw out some.
Just yelling.
Yelling.
Just losing it.
Losing it, yeah. Yelling, losing it, which are huge. That's huge. I think we've all been witness to that, right? Oh my God.
Your frustration on your child.
Yeah. So just sum up here. This can go on and on, but attacking the child. You know, we've seen, and I meant attacking like putting the child down kind of thing. I mean, certainly abusive stuff would be not be effective. But putting the child down, degrading them, humiliating them, all of that stuff is not effective strategies, okay, as far as discipline strategies. You want them to be able to correct the behavior. And so often I find parents, they're not letting them correct the behavior. If they spilt it, let them clean it up, you know, give them an opportunity. Here, you can, you know, be down there helping them. That's good because you're also helping and working with them and showing them how. If they scribble on the wall, okay, we're going to be cleaning this up, and you go to the wall and they could clean it up. But so often the parent will do all that stuff. Well, they're yelling, don't do this, and I told you not to do this, and why did you? But give them the opportunity to correct it. Oh, sorry. Yelling and screaming, yeah. Letting anger dominate the situation. You're angry, and for the most part, once emotions are lit, basically, it's hard to get people to cooperate with you, and not just children. That's across the board for relationships. With coworkers, anything. Once you get people's emotions going, it's very difficult to engage people to cooperate. So it's really important that all parties just, and particularly you're the parent, that you try to remain even keel, stress what you need to. There's sometimes that we need to sort of back out of it because we feel like we're just going to explode and lose it. And you need to step back. Because that is when parents could grab their child, sling them across the room, throw stuff, break stuff, and then if we're doing that and we're modeling for the child, and the child sees we're out of control, right? And that's a horrible feeling. And lecturing, threatening. My husband has a tendency, he'll just go on and on and on. You guys think I'm bad with him? I had to tell him yesterday, oh my gosh. I said, cut it, enough. He's going, and this is when the kids are doing what they're supposed to. You got him up, they're doing what they're supposed to, and he's just going on, and they're washing clothes, and they're doing shut the heck up, Were you going to say something?
I was about to say plan ignoring you the moment he starts.
You're right. Yeah. I feel so badly for the kids, because he's going on and thinking, oh my gosh, they're doing what they need to do, and then they're being harassed on top of it. Yeah.
One thing I was going to say as we're moving to inconsistency, I think inconsistency on rules for both sides of the parents, I think that's the biggest struggle. One parent is saying one thing and the other parent's not, and you're saying it in front of the child, and that's one big thing I try where can we go talk about this before you make a decision? Because then she'll automatically, each of us has our own thing that
you're right.
We have non-negotiables in certain things, and sometimes they don't match, and
yeah.
I'm okay with certain things, and I'll say no, it's okay, and then he'll say, no, it's not okay, and then she's just kind of standing there. So we try to okay, you know what? We don't have an answer for you right now. Give us a couple minutes, and then we'll discuss it away from her. Yeah. And then we come back.
And we'll get
that's
back
one
to you
big
on
thing
it.
we're trying, because otherwise then, she'll say, well, Daddy told me yes, or she'll come and say to her dad.
What's
"No,
amazing is
it's
even
just-
really young kids, they'll know better than us what we should do.
Yeah.
You should do this. When I do this, you should do that. They'll tell you what you should employ.
So that's
why didn't I think of that?
That's our big thing now. We'll say,
Yeah.
we're going to, we don't have an answer right now. Let Mommy and Daddy talk about it. And she's like, okay. Because I'd rather her wait than,
No, I think that's
have
the
her
fact that
see.
you're talking as a couple, because that is what sometimes you sabotage each other. So I'm rewarding this behavior, and he doesn't want it, and you could see that that's.
And in front of the child. That's the biggest
And
thing.
then kids learn.
I think
Okay,
it's
I go
okay.
to Mom for this, and then Dad for this one, and Mom for Dad said this, and So you do have to, when it's a team like that, you gotta try to as much as possible. But then you have those differences in parenting styles. It could get.
You pick your battles.
Yeah, but it sounds like you guys work pretty well together.
And I found a lot of our parents are single parents, mostly single moms, occasionally a single dad. And I find that's especially challenging because they don't have anybody to bounce things off of sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they know it's not safe to ask their parent or, the grandparent or anything like that, so they really are kind of isolated.
Yeah.
I notice occasionally my daughter will come over to my house and say, okay, I have tried this, what other consequences can I do? What can I do? And she has an outlet. She doesn't always use it or like it,
Yeah.
but at least she has something to do that with. And
Yeah.
I think parents sometimes do that with us.
Yeah. I think it's important. I mean, I know, it's another tasking thing for you guys, but
Especially
I think we really need
with
it.
siblings, I think, of the child we're working with.
Mhm.
I think that comes out a lot of whole lot, and this will be very
Yeah, so I'm
valuable.
hoping maybe this will help in some of those instances, because even just like you said, whether they take it or not, but just to have somebody to bounce it off of, you know, particularly when you don't have much of a support system with that, you want to check in. So lecturing and threatening, not so good. I don't know how many times, you know, my husband has told the boys he's going to send them to boot camp, and, you know, they're going to, are we really planning on that in the near future? They're going to go to, you know, but it's funny, again, much of the way that we have been parented often comes out, particularly in times of stress and, you know, when you're over emotional, it's coming out from there. Not being clear on expectations. You know, I find that a lot. People sometimes think they're very clear in what they're telling the kid to do. Go pick up the room. You know, they go in there, they move one thing. Well, I did that already. You know, so what does that mean? You know, clean up the room, pick up the room, clear the table. You know, do I need to put all the food? You know, what does that mean? So being specific as to what you mean. And inconsistency, which really probably should have been at the top of the list here, is the number one problem when implementing kind of behavior strategies and plans when you're trying to change behavior. Yeah, you really need to try to get that down. And like I said, it's not going to be 100%, but you want to strive for something relatively close, because that makes the difference between the core, you know, connecting and not connecting with what we know from the learning principles. So that's huge. I'm going to go into this after lunch because that's something I wanted to share with you, and then we'll come back. So, okay, so why don't you guys get your lunch, and then come back, and we'll finish up